Hey, welcome back to Normalize the Conversation. Today, I am here with Tim Markle. Tim is going to share his story with us and talk to us about the forgiveness factor. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to learn more about you and the work you're doing. But before we jump into that conversation, I really want to check in. How are you really?
How am I really? Well, today I really am kind of flustered a little bit all over the place with my thoughts. I just attended a grief and bereavement conference the other day, and that's just brought back a lot of memories of people that I've lost to various means. And so I'm like resettling today, actually, I guess is the way that I could put it.
That was such a beautifully honest answer. That is so relatable. When I have even a moment to think about people that I've lost, I've noticed the change in my energy and the way I just feel inside and the way I express myself, and taking that time to reset is so important. So thank you for being so honest about that.
It's one of the things that I've had to learn to do because before I was really more aware of what was going on inside. I would just have these days where I was just really scrambled, where my thoughts were scrambled and I seemed to be going from one thing to another without any really reason. And then I started to learn, well, there is a reason. You're unsettled inside. And there's something that is making me not be able to focus. And so I've learned to slow down and reflect on what that might be so that I can sort of work through it. And I'm very aware today. It's because I am missing people in my life and I'm grieving their loss.
Awareness is honestly the key to, I think, mental health and getting through those tough times, especially when it comes to loss. If you don't mind me asking, what has the process of loss and grief look like for you?
Oh man, each loss has been a little bit different. Um, my, I guess I could reflect on some of my major losses,
Yeah.
which would include years ago when I was in college. I had two friends who died by suicide within 2 weeks of each other, and
Wow.
that loss took me totally off balance. Is I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know what was going on inside of me. And so I decided that I just wanted to numb everything. I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to feel the grief. I didn't want to feel the what should I have done? The how could it have been different? How did I fail my friends? I didn't want to deal with any of that. And so I started to drink really, really heavily. And I didn't come out of that fog for probably about 3 years. And so learning to grieve was also part of my learning to recover from alcoholism and to still be in recovery today, which now means that when, my latest major loss would have been my dad just a few years ago. And it was entirely different. I understood what was going on. I had a chance to connect with him before he died, and this sort of gets into the forgiveness as well. I was able to work on forgiveness with him before he passed. He was an alcoholic too, and so our lives were pretty much a mess. But grieving his loss was so much different because of the work that I've done on becoming aware of what's going on inside of me, on deciding that, I'm not deciding that if I try to run away or if I try to stop feeling something, it comes out sideways. It comes out in another way. I can't avoid it. So I've learned that I have to work through it. And sometimes that's hard. And sometimes it's, not so hard because it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. I've done this before. Okay. And I'm able to push forward and I'm able to push through. But life keeps surprising us.
Tim, first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry for your losses. And thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable with us. I can't imagine in college. I mean, I'm around that age now. I am in grad school, and to be losing friends, two friends to suicide at that age has to be so, I can't even think of the words. It's a time in your life where you're figuring out who you are, who your friends are, what life is, what life's supposed to be. It's this time of really just questions and insecurity and trying to make sense of everything. And in the midst of that, to experience two major losses
You,
has to be just devastating.
you just, that was a fantastic summary, because you're absolutely right. I was leaving high school, and high school wasn't exactly the best experience for me. There was battling with depression and shame. And so college was this opportunity to go away and remake myself and become somebody that I really wanted to be. And I'll tell you honestly, there was one person I didn't want to really be, and that was an alcoholic. And so my freshman year was really full of new experiences and really revitalizing who I was, and thinking that this is a great path forward, and I'm doing it. I'm breaking from the past. And then to have those losses at the end of my freshman year, it stopped all of the growth. And I feel like I stopped growing for years after that. It interrupted everything good that I felt I had going on in my life. And it's taken a while to recover that.
Wow, the way you put it. I mean, you're right. It's a time where you're supposed to be growing and you are growing. And when something traumatic happens at that time, growth tends to stop. The world kind of stands still around you while,
Absolutely.
or your world stands still while the rest of the world is still going. And it can be so just, I don't even know the word for it. I remember when I experienced it, I wasn't a freshman, but I had just graduated undergrad when I lost my grandfather and my uncle. My uncle was to suicide. And it felt like the time just, everyone else was still moving and still going. And I was stuck. I didn't know who I was anymore, what I was supposed to do, how to cope, how to grieve, how to do anything. And again, that feeling of wanting to numb the pain. For me, I was more into harming myself than into drinking. But these are both such common modalities for numbing ourselves. So when you got to that point of wanting to numb yourself, when did you realize that alcohol was no longer just a crutch? It was now turning into something more serious.
There were a couple of factors. Number one was this gradual, over a few years, figuring out that no matter how hard I tried, no matter the different challenges that I set up for myself, such as, well, if I get a 4.0, then I obviously can't be an alcoholic. If I can go out with my friends and they don't think I'm acting any different, then obviously I must not be an alcoholic. If I can keep my job, if I can keep in school. And so looking at all those things and then looking and going, but that's not, but who did I really want to be? Was I still becoming the person I wanted to be? And I remember one friend put it so well to me. She's like, I have to tell you, Tim, you're a really great guy and you're a lot of fun to be around. But because you're drinking, I just can't hang out with you. And that really gave me pause, because it wasn't about what I could do, but it was about who was I becoming. And that scared me enough into getting tested, which I, of course, did. And of course, it turned out that, I was susceptible to alcohol. And I, of course, went out and drank that night. And it wasn't for another month or two before I kept trying different things. Like, I decided I would only drink when I was happy. And so I wouldn't drink when I was mad, but it turned out that even when I'm happy, I still got drunk. It didn't matter what mood I was in. It didn't matter what had happened in my day. Once I started drinking, I didn't stop until there was no more alcohol or no more chance to drink alcohol, as, passed out. And so that loss of who I wanted to become and the loss of control really took me into wanting to recover. And so I entered into an outpatient program. That was over 30 years ago. And I've been sober since then.
Wow. Wow, Tim, thank you again for being so open and vulnerable. These are conversations that so many are afraid to have and so many need. Back to your point of making these kind of pointers or markers for yourself, where if I can get a 4.0, I'm not an alcoholic. This point of deniability, where we try to use something as an excuse for why this isn't true. And this can go for so many different aspects, not just with substance use, but then going into if people didn't notice, or I'm only going to drink when I'm happy, but I'm still getting drunk. Getting to see these different pieces, people don't talk about that when they talk about alcoholism. Oftentimes, I know in my experience, what I hear is more, I was drinking till I blacked out every night, and I was waking up not dressed in random houses, random beds, and that's what alcoholism is. And people oftentimes see it as that, and they don't see it as these smaller moments within that you can actually see. So thank you for being so open.
And that, everybody has it. It said everybody has their own bottom, but I think a lot of times we hope we're going to get better, but the pain isn't great enough. And so we keep doing things that harm us until the pain gets great enough. And one of the things that I've realized throughout life is if I'm in pain, it means something's wrong. I don't have to wait to be in more pain before I reach out and get help. Is just the fact that I'm feeling any sort of pain, any sort of anger, loss of control, wanting to hurt myself, wanting to drink again. I don't have to wait till I go and drink again to get help. Is I can search for help when I'm hurting. I don't have to wait to hit bottom anymore.
That is so true. We tend to think things need to be worse for us to reach out for support, or for something to be bad enough that we deserve help or that we should get help. How did you change your mindset to recognize that?
That's a great question. Years of therapy, years of recovery. A lot of it is actually turning from wanting to recover to actually doing the work of recovery. When I first went into AA, I stayed sober, but I certainly wasn't recovering. I was sort of doing my own kind of program, and I was pretty much miserable. But the only thing I was doing right was I wasn't drinking. And even years into sobriety, it was that way. I dealt with other addictions along the way, other issues, and I'd say my path of self-harm also went along the ways of, well, I'm just not going to do it, and that only works for so long. And so what I've learned is it's not that I have to I have to stop doing something. But what's more important is what do I start doing? Is what do I add to my life to fill that hole, to live during recovery and not just live with loss, but to move forward. And that's where working on being aware of my thoughts, being more aware of my feelings, and trying not to just be this person that when something happens, I automatically respond, because usually when that happens, I respond in a very negative way. I'm trying to become this person that something happens and my first reaction is wait. And let that initial anger, disappointment, depression flow through, so that then I have space to make a decision about who do I want to respond as? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I as somebody who's been hurt? Who am I as somebody who's been disappointed? Who am I who's somebody who's feeling sad right now? What do I do about it? Not just the reaction that I do automatically. I'm working on stopping those automatic responses. That's made a huge difference when I realized that I don't have to just act. I get to think before I act. And I never thought I could, to be perfectly honest. I thought I was doomed to just continue to do the same mistakes over and over and over again, and that there wasn't any help. Through counseling, through becoming more aware, I figured out that, guess what? I don't have to just respond to life. Or just react to life. I get to respond to it. It's made a huge difference.
Wow. I'm trying to process all of that to be able to, first of all, think before reacting, responding is so difficult, and it takes a long time to cultivate, because we just tend to live in a world where everything is so reactive, and that's among every single thing that happens. We tend to wait till we're sick to go to the doctor and get medication. It's not until we're older that we may tend to start taking vitamins or supplements to prevent us from getting sick, to help build our immune system. We don't learn to be proactive beforehand. It tends to be years later. So getting to a point now where you are able to think before reacting is huge, and it's something so many people can't do. And it's something that is often just not taught to us. I really want to go back, though, and say congratulations on decades of sobriety. That is amazing. I did not want to skip over that celebration. And going back to where you said, what can you start to do to make change? Because, like you said, just not drinking is not enough, because there's still pain inside of you. There's still something, that void that needs to be filled. So what can we do? For you, I know you talked a little bit about what you did. However, I'm really curious to know, in that moment, what was the very first thing that you tried?
The very first moment that I tried to stop drinking?
The very first thing you tried, the first thing that you tried after you said, I'm going to stop drinking, but now I need to make that step forward. So many people don't know what a step like that should look like or be, and they're afraid of it. So I'm wondering, what was that? I guess it's the next step. What was that next step for you?
So I'm not the model of how to do it right the first time. Even though I've been sober for a long time, that just means that I haven't taken a drink of alcohol. I've not been in recovery, I would say, in that whole time. So in the beginning, I did what I was supposed to do. Is I went to meetings. I worked on getting people around me to help me. But I didn't want to give up my fun social life. And so I remember I had a job as a teacher at a high school the fall after I got sober, and the teachers all got together and went out to a bar to celebrate another great work week. And I just started to go along with them pretending that drinking my Diet Coke was as much fun as drinking beer, when all the time I was just miserable wanting to drink the beer. And so I had to learn that there's just some times and places that it's just not good for, it's not healthy for me to be at. And that continues to this day. Now, years later, I have to really check myself before I go into a bar. Why am I here? Am I here for the people that I'm hanging around? Well, if I'm here for the people, to enjoy the people, I have a reason to be here. Okay, well, that has nothing to do with alcohol. And so, all right, then I'm going to be able to go. Whereas if I check myself and it's just like, I want to go to the bar because it's loud and it's anonymous and it's a place where you just let your hair down and I'm just really ticked at life and I just really want to release. Well, that's a big red flag for me. Then it's like, whoa, Tim, this is not a good time to be in a bar. You need to find someplace safe. You need to find people to be safe around, not people that are going to let you get away with shit. Let you get away with stuff. You need to be around people that care for you enough to not let you hurt yourself through drinking. So that was a major change. The mindset that changed for me was I used to picture myself, my depressions and everything always used to feel like this damp pit that I was just, and the walls were just slimy and muddy and I couldn't get out and it was dark. And the best that I could do was just sit there and wallow literally in the mud of my depression pit. And that's what I thought was what I could do. Along the way, I learned that movement, no matter what kind of movement, but just moving helps me with my depression. And so I've changed the image in my mind from this pit to this sort of magical tunnel, is that if I sit there, then everything is closed in and the walls are solid. But if I start to move, the pit turns into a tunnel. And I just keep putting one foot in front of the other foot, and I just keep moving. Now, sometimes that movement is just getting out of bed and going to work. Sometimes that movement is an actual walk side. Sometimes that movement is doing something for myself that I enjoy. But it's some sort of moving forward, because I remind myself that I'm in a tunnel and I'm going to get to the end of the tunnel. I just keep moving forward. And so far that's been working for me. I haven't yet found the tunnel that doesn't have an end. As long as I keep moving, I come out on the other side. And so that's really been a helpful visual for me.
Tim, not only have you come so far along your journey, but you have really been able to put it into words to inspire others. I mean, listening to you, you can't see it, but I am starting to tear up because you can just feel what you've gone through and how much hope you have to offer. And now I want to take this opportunity to switch over to the forgiveness factor to learn more about it and what it means to you.
Well, it all ties together. One of my issues, and there were many. There was shame, there was abuse and stuff growing up. But one of my biggest issues was my anger at my dad. He was a very active alcoholic. He was not an abusive alcoholic. He was neglectful, and became very obvious at a young age that he preferred to drink over being with his family or over keeping his family safe. And so I made a vow that I was never going to turn out like him. I was never going to drink like him. I was going to be a much better dad than he ever was to me. And I didn't want anything to do with him. And so I cut myself away from his life. Here I wrote him a letter and said, Dad, I am now sober, and I just want to let you know that I am working on, giving you for X, Y, and Z and all these things. And I remember he wrote back and he's like, well, thanks, but I don't remember any of those things. And so I was stuck. How do you forgive someone who doesn't even remember they hurt you? And I stayed stuck for a while. But the pain inside didn't go away. This desire for relationship didn't go away. Along the way, I ended up getting married and having children, and my wife refused to not allow my parents to see their grandchildren. And so we had to figure out a way that I could be around this person that I viscerally hated. And that started really slowly. And thanks to my wife, we were able to spend little bits of time, a little bit more time. We didn't jump in right away. I always had a backup plan. And then I had this opportunity to study what forgiveness actually is and how does it fit with my faith background. And so I dug into this as part of a master's program. And I found out that all this time I've been trying to forgive, but I really didn't know how. Nobody taught me how to forgive. They were always like, oh my gosh, forgiveness is so good and you need to forgive. And it even came back, I heard the message that if you don't forgive, you're not a good follower. If you don't forgive, you're a bad person, and good people forgive. And so then I was mad at myself for not forgiving when the reality was I didn't know how to forgive. And so once I learned how to forgive, I figured out that there's a lot of people out there who are stuck in anger and are stuck in resentment. They're stuck in unforgiveness, and they have probably heard the same message I heard, that you should forgive and that forgiveness helps, but nobody's ever taught them how. And so I started to take what I've learned and started to do classes on how to forgive based on the work of Dr. Robert Enright. He's out of the International Forgiveness Institute. He is a pioneer in the area of forgiveness. And so once I started digging into forgiveness and was able to forgive my dad, which made his death and that grief so much different, was that ability to forgive made all the difference. Then I started to see, how could this forgiveness work that I'm doing, how can it go to other parts of my life that I've struggled with? And so I started to also look into what role could forgiveness possibly have in suicide prevention. And thinking back to my own life and the times where, a lot of my forgiveness work, it started with my dad, but then a lot of it had to turn inward. I had to look at, how do I forgive myself for the self-harm? How do I forgive myself for the drinking? How do I forgive myself for the broken relationships? How do I forgive myself for the way that I let down my sister and my brother? And the list could go endless, because we know our brains will list all of these bad things that we've done. I don't know why they do that, but it does it, and it annoys me. But I could automatically come up with all these bad things. So I realized I needed to really work on forgiving myself. What if I had done that work of forgiving myself before I got into harming myself, before I wanted to die? If I could have helped myself back then what a different life I would have had. And there's so many people out there that are there. And I want to be able to help them learn how to forgive themselves, how to look back and be able to say, yeah, I did that, but it's not me. I am different than who I was. I have the ability to move forward today. I help people think about the fact that we judge ourselves on a different standard than we judge anybody else. The way that I put it is we look around and we compare our blooper reel to everybody else's highlight reel. And that's not fair. And we need to realize that everybody has blooper reels. Some are just more noticeable than others. And I just happen to be blooping in public quite a bit. So there's just some things that I've learned to help come to grips with the person that I was, the anger that I had against myself, to be able to live my best life today.
Everything you said, I've completely resonated with. Going back to not knowing how to forgive, you are so right. Everyone tells us about the importance of forgiveness. I grew up in a Catholic school where it was always forgive, forgive, forgive. Jesus forgave, you have to forgive. But no one ever told us how. So when I struggled to forgive, when I felt like I was holding a grudge, when I felt just anger and I couldn't let it go, I thought something was wrong with me because I just didn't know what to do. And I think it's something that's so common. We don't know how to forgive. People tend to tell us what to do, but don't give us that blueprint. How did you figure out kind of that blueprint for yourself?
Well, I dug deep into the work of Dr. Enright, and I looked at what he's come up with. What I really liked was he has a scientific process of forgiveness. He's like tested this model out and teaching people to forgive, and it works. And the outcomes are amazing. And so I looked at his work and I combined it with my faith background, and I found that it matched. And so I didn't have to like deny a very important part of my life, the spiritual side of me, but I could use the science to help heal me. And so it was a wonderful blend. And then it's all about noticing what's irking me. You know, why am I upset? Where's it going back to? And reminding myself sometimes, oh my gosh, reminding myself quite often, hey dude, you've dealt with that. Remember, you worked on that forgiveness. That was a former version of yourself. You're going to move on now. And saying those things either in my mind or saying them out loud. I am a big proponent of speak to yourself out loud. Is it something very different when I hear my own voice going through my ears, when it's telling me good things about myself, when I'm reaffirming myself, than just that inner voice that still wants to put me down. And I've learned that I sometimes need to combat that voice, that inner voice, with an actual vocal voice. And so I'll say, no, you have worked on forgiving that person. And yes, they're hurting you right now, but they are still a human being, which means they are worthy of respect. They are worth, they have inherent worth. They don't count on you to give them worth or me to give them worth. They have worth, just like I have worth. I don't count on other people to give me my worth. I have inherent worth. And I don't know what's going on inside of them today. So if they have inherent worth and I don't know what's going on, I don't need to take on their crap. And if it's somebody that I've had a history with and that I've already worked on forgiving, then I remind myself that I've forgiven them. And I remind myself that I've forgiven myself for a lot of my stuff too. When I go back and I start to want to wallow in those memories, and I could feel that pull of the pit wanting to draw me back in, is knowing that I've done the work and saying, you know what, Tim, remember, you forgave yourself for that. You looked at the circumstances. Even at 17, 18, you had inherent worth. You didn't always make the right decisions, but that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. You've worked on that forgiveness. You don't need to go back and keep beating yourself up over it. And that's really helped.
It is so important to recognize and acknowledge ourselves as humans who make mistakes and to accept that mistakes will happen, but that doesn't have to define us, and allowing ourselves to forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we made, the ones that we often play like a broken record in the back of our mind, just telling us why we were not good enough or why we were wrong or why we hurt people or that we hurt people. So I know in my experience, when I worked on self-forgiveness and even the ability to forgive others, I personally disconnected from everyone and just spent time with myself, trying to listen to myself and make sense of what I was feeling and where it was coming from so that I could move forward. What did that initial process look like for you when you were trying to begin to forgive yourself?
Oh my gosh, it was very messy. And it certainly wasn't a straight line. It was a work on this. Okay, I think I'm doing better here. All right, let's continue on, and then getting reminded, being tweaked, finding myself right back to that self-hatred. And not, it took me the longest time to not get upset at the fact that I wasn't where I wanted to be, but to understand that if I still wanted to get where I wanted to be, I had to stop doing the same thing over and over. And so coming to the realization that I need to do something different when that memory tweaks me, when I'm back into that awful place that I don't want to be, instead of beating myself up in there, instead of staying in there, I had to do something different. And forgiveness gave me a way to do something, gave me a way to say, whoops, are you thinking yourself as you have inherent worth? Because it sounds like you're treating yourself like you're this monster that has absolutely no worth. And you know that's not true. You know everybody has worth. Are you treating yourself as if you're not unique? As if you're not the only one out here in this world, that you're expendable? Because you know, we've talked about them, you're not expendable. None of us are. We are a unique compilation of memories and DNA that can never be replicated. No matter what the cloning movies have to say, it's not going to happen. It can't happen that way. We are unique. And so if I am unique, special, and I have inherent worth, then why am I beating myself up? Oh yeah, I don't need to. I can do something. And so it's just another tool that I can use to help myself get better.
Tim, the way you put it is so, I don't think inspiring is even a strong enough word to describe it. It is so important to recognize that we have worth. How often, how many people can sit there and look at themselves and say, I am worthy and I feel worthy. I feel worthy of my own self-love and self-forgiveness and compassion and kindness. It seems to be so difficult as humans because we do criticize ourselves. But the way you put it, wow, I'm honestly speechless, which does not happen often because I love to talk. Tim, you are incredible. Before we wrap up, do you have any advice you can offer to someone who may not know that they need to forgive themselves?
If I would say that if you find yourself thinking that there should be more to life, that it may be your resentments are like baggage that are holding you back. And so one of the things I encourage people to do, if they're just like, I don't seem to be moving forward, well, then let's maybe take a chance at looking at what's holding you back. The other thing is, looking at those habits, those things that we do to numb ourselves and to keep us from feeling. Maybe we're trying to cover up our hurt that happened a long time ago. And what we're dealing with is a resentment and an anger that can only be dealt with through forgiveness. That's not going to go away, no matter how much we try to numb it. We can try to pretend it didn't happen, but we can't change the past. The past is done. But we can deal with the past by helping ourselves today.
That is incredible advice. Tim, how can people connect with you and learn more about the forgiveness factor?
Sure. So tried to make it a little easy. It's not, I will tell you right now, you're not going to find a fancy, glossy website. This is me and all my messiness. But they can go to forgivenessfactor.org, .org, and there they'll find a little bit more about me. They'll find out about upcoming speaking engagements that I have. I link to the International Forgiveness Institute, which has some awesome stuff by Dr. Enright on the how to forgive. He has some books out there. But I also, through there, you can also sign up, receive a weekly forgiveness boost, where I just think about what's going on in my life and I relate it to forgiveness and try to write that out for people, try to help them out each week.
Tim, thank you again so much for joining me today.
It has been an honor and a pleasure, and I'm so glad that I've gotten a chance to hear your story, which was also very uplifting to me. And so I love the fact that we connected. So thank you.